Welcome to Foundations of Online Genealogy. My name is Jen Schaefer, also known as the Formidable Genealogist, and this is my first class in my series of different classes that I have available. And this is going to lay the foundation of everything you need to know about the different genealogy websites, which types of records you can expect to find and where, and just kind of lay that groundwork that you need to be a good family history researcher. Now, here are all of the sections that we are going to cover. The first one is we're going to talk about all of the different genealogy websites, the various pros and cons to using them to help you figure out exactly what you should be using because they are not all created the same. Then we'll talk about the where and when of records so that you can know which type of things you should be expecting to find in different times and different places because, spoiler alert, you can't go find a modern looking birth certificate for the year 1500. It's going to vary by time and place. Then we'll talk about the various DNA testing companies and what you can expect to find from them. Then that first three sections, that's going to be the longest, like bulk of the talk, and 4, 5, and 6 are not as long. So don't fear if you are thoroughly exhausted when we hit the number 4 section in this talk, and it's going to go pretty quick after that. So 4 will be myths and limitations in your research. 5 is going to be research in the old country. If you happen to have any family that can be traced back to another country prior to the US or Canada or wherever you are watching this from. And then we're going to talk a little bit about research skills before we end the talk. Now, here are the main genealogy websites. So Ancestry is pretty much synonymous with family history research. I am certain that you have heard of that one before. MyHeritage is kind of the second place for paid genealogy websites. They're just not quite as big, but sometimes the records you need will be on one site and not the other. FamilySearch is entirely free. It is run by the LDS Church out of Salt Lake City. And then Findmypast is a much smaller site. That one's going to be more niche. That's going to be for UK research. So you would only typically want that if you have mostly UK research to do. Now, I want to point out that when I first got started, I wish somebody would have sat me down and explained the differences between all of these different websites because I thought it was kind of like choosing a cable provider. I thought they all basically had the same things. You just had to choose which format you wanted and which provider you wanted to use. I thought it was like, if you want MyHeritage and Ancestry, if they're like a cable provider, they're all going to have Comedy Central. They're all going to have Adult Swim. They're all going to have CNN. But that's not the case. Each one has its own strengths for geographic areas and times for records. They are not created the same. So we'll start with Ancestry, which is the most well-known platform, and it is my top pick. It is what I prefer for my own research and for client research. I find that their family tree feature is the easiest to use, and also their search function is the best one out there. So here are some facts about them as of 2025. They have 60 billion searchable names in their record. So that means in an indexed record, like a census record, there are 60 billion different names that you can search for that will come up with attached records. As far as online trees that are created by users, there are 3.6 billion searchable names in user-created family trees. So that means there's a lot of searchable names that are not attached to anyone yet. They do have 131 million online trees that are created by individual users. I want to point out that nobody is double checking these trees. They can be full of errors because they are just created by users on their own. They do have records from 88 different countries. Now, they have auto-generated hints, which can really help you when you're first getting started. But you need to understand how those work because it appears like somebody's already done the work for you and it's just popping up and you just have to apply it to your tree. But you may quickly end up climbing the wrong family tree if you don't carefully vet these hints. Let's say you have John Livingston in your tree, born around 1840. You enter him, you don't have any records attached. Their algorithm is going to go out and look at other user trees that have a John Livingston in them born in 1840. And it's going to look and see what that person has attached in their family tree. And then it's going to send you those records as hints. And then you have to carefully view them and determine if they're correct and either ignore them or apply them. But let's say they did not put any careful research into their tree. It might be sending you completely illogical things like somebody born in Georgia, married in Azerbaijan, and dying in India. So you're going to have to pay attention to those hints and you can't just blindly accept them or you will regret it. They do have 3 levels of subscriptions, and I'll show you those in a couple slides so that you can figure out what would be good for you. They have add-ons of Fold 3, which is military records, and newspapers.com because they acquire other smaller websites and then incorporate them into the Ancestry package, an Ancestry bundle. When you first get started, if you are US based, Ancestry is pretty much essential for US research, at least at the start. They have a lot of unique collections that you can only find there specific to the US. I do like their family tree function. It is an individual tree that is owned by you, and you can have it either private or public, but nobody can go in and change anything on your tree unless you explicitly give them access to do so. It has different levels of access like editor, viewer, contributor, so that you can figure out how you want to share it with other people and what level you want them to have. It is compatible with software. If you do not want an online family tree, this will be compatible with desktop software like Family Tree Maker and Roots Magic. I personally prefer an online only tree because then you are always getting the most recent version and any upgrades. You never have to worry about software no longer being compatible with your new computer or anything like that. They do have Pro Tools that they have added on as an additional subscription, and that's going to be the bells and whistles. Any type of new research and development thing that they release, any type of new feature will now go there and not to just the basic package on Ancestry. So this is my favorite site to use, and they do have a 2-week free trial, as most of these subscription websites do. Keep in mind, they are a for-profit company. So yes, you will have to pay more for better features and for these new releases that they come out with in Pro Tools. But if that is in your budget, then it is a very solid pick. Now, their website is very friendly, and it also has a free app that you can use on a smartphone or on a tablet if you prefer to do your research that way. They are constantly adding to their collections. It's never just, closed off and no longer expanding. They are adding 3 to 5 million new records per day. And they will continue to be the industry leader because they have the most room for growth. They are the largest company and they do have investors involved. So they are able to put more money into a better user experience. If you were to subscribe for a while and build this wonderful tree and then cancel your subscription, it's not going anywhere. I've heard a lot of people tell me that they're afraid to ever cancel their subscription or pause it because they don't want to lose all their work. It'll stay right there. You just won't be able to access all of it. You will not be able to view the records that you have attached unless you have an active subscription, but you can pause it or cancel it for a while. It's very easy for collaborating and sharing with others, like I mentioned, too. And those people to look at your tree, they would not need to have a paid Ancestry subscription. They could look at the skeletal part of your tree, like the different facts. They just couldn't view the actual records without a subscription. And they wouldn't need to create a free trial to get a username and password to view it either. They can just create the free user account. They do have the most military records because they have fold3.com folded into their subscriptions as well. Honestly, the main con is the expense of it. It is pretty pricey, but they do have 50% off sales quite often. What I usually recommend people do is to sign up around like Thanksgiving, Christmas when it's 50% off sale. Therefore, your subscription will expire the next time they have that sale too. If you go for a year, then you can let it expire and then you can sign back up at that 50% off rate. So that's kind of a sneaky way to get that is only available for non-active subscriptions. The only other real con is that it can kind of mislead you a little bit with the hints because of other tree errors. But as long as you are equipped with that knowledge going into it, you should be fine. Each of these sites has its own geographic strengths. Here are some of the geographic strengths for Ancestry.com. They have also acquired a smaller site called Genealogy, so they now have the largest French record collection in the world as well, as they continue to grow their brand and add more things in there. Now, the smartest thing you can do before you subscribe to any genealogy website, any newspaper site, anything, is you need to see what they have. And they will be transparent about that, and they will let you view a card catalog or collection catalog for free to see if the records that they have match what you need to research. So let's say that you are predominantly wanting to research Lithuanian ancestors. If you go out to the card catalog and Ancestry, you might not find any Lithuanian records. If you go out to the collection catalog on MyHeritage, you might find a lot of Lithuanian records. So you need to be on the site where the records you need exist. There are also a lot of free records available on Ancestry.com too. I wrote a whole research guide on how to find the free side of Ancestry.com, and you can find that in the shop on my website. You can also just Google free records on Ancestry.com and it will take you straight to the free records that exist on their site. They also occasionally have free days, like in conjunction with anniversaries of the end of World War II, they might have records available for free for military records too. So you need to be on their list and be aware of the different sales that they might have and the different free days that they may have. Now, these are the 3 levels that they have for subscriptions. The basic one is the US Discovery one, or if you're in Canada or another country, they will have that national level for you. The next one up is the World Explorer level, and that's going to give you all international records. So everything they have on Ancestry.com. The All Access level is your best value because that includes all records plus everything on Fold 3 and the top tier of newspapers.com as well. And here is why this is the best value. It can be split between 5 accounts. So if you have 4 other friends that enjoy doing family research, or maybe they're cousins or something, you can all split it. One person would purchase the subscription, and then you would dole out the invitations to that group subscription to the people that are involved in it. And everybody logs in through their own account. You don't have to share a tree or share an account. It just gives you access. So that is by far the best deal if you can find other people to go in on it with you. They have also rolled out a Preserve My Tree membership. Now, that would just be $5 per month, and that would allow you access to a current snapshot of everything you have in your Ancestry tree. So if you cancel your subscription and do Preserve My Tree for $5 per month, you would be able to see all of those records you've already attached. You just would not be able to view new hints or new records on their site. This could be a good option if you want to dabble a little bit during like warmer months and not do any hardcore research, then you would still have access. Or if you build your family tree on Ancestry, but look for records on like MyHeritage or FamilySearch and want to still be able to see what you have out here. Ancestry Pro Tools is that add-on that I mentioned. That's where all the new features are going to go first. If they have any new features that they are testing, they will also end up on Ancestry Pro Tool user accounts first. So this has been really useful for me in my research, but I'm in here all day, every day. So you'll need to evaluate if it's a good add-on for you. It's $10 per month, and you don't have to sign on for large chunks of time at a time. And a lot of times they do have it for half price, so watch for those sales too. These are the current Pro Tools that exist, and I'm going to show you examples of each one and explain them a little bit. They have released a tree checker. So you can see the tree rating for this tree is 8.3 out of 10, so that's pretty good. It's going to tell you about possible duplicates in your tree, which can happen from applying census records and accidentally creating multiple people and not attributing them to the correct people. Sometimes you might accidentally have like somebody, like two brothers marrying two sisters and end up with duplicates that way. This is also going to point out the people in your tree that have no sources attached, just no documentation, and other logic errors. Like it might point out that you have the mother of somebody born in 1840 dying in 1810, and it'll point out those logic errors for you. Tree Mapper has been very helpful for me when I'm trying to visualize where people lived, but pay a lot of attention to formatting, because if you look over here on the right, I have a lot of people who were living in Chaz Mix, and that's all I have there in my tree. That is actually Charles Mix County, South Dakota, but it's not recognizing Chaz Mix because it's not listed the appropriate way of county, state, and country. It can only read that format. So in these cases, it's pointing out that my family lived in Chad in Africa, which they did not. So prior to using this and putting any stock into it, I want you to double check those locations for correct formatting. It's great having an online tree, but a lot of people have requested different types of reports they can run, ways that they can demonstrate, 7 generations, maybe put it in a binder, maybe send it to family members. And that's something you can do now in Pro Tools. They have 4 different document styles and 4 different types of reports. And I look for this to become expanded too. I think they will add a lot more to this. DNA shared matches, that has been a huge thing in Pro Tools. So before you could only look at DNA matches and see how many centimorgans they shared with you, how they were related to you. You can now select another DNA match and then see how that DNA match relates to them. So that is very helpful for anybody that is trying to figure out like unknown family, especially for adoptees. Networks was released in March of 2025, and this is a way for you to figure out how other people relate to each other even if they're not related. A lot of people use this to track people that immigrated on the same ship and put them in here and then create these networks of people. Some people like to take different regiments from different military endeavors and put all those people into a network. Maybe you'll take somebody from a congregation and add all the other congregation members in there, because It's not always just about tracing your own family. A lot of answers will lie with like friends, associates, and neighbors as well. MyHeritage is the second largest platform for building a family tree and tracing people and looking at their records. They are not as big as Ancestry, but if the records you need are only on MyHeritage and not on Ancestry, that's entirely irrelevant. So they have 32 billion searchable names in records and 6.1 billion searchable names in family trees. They have 52 million online family trees that are created by users as well. Ancestry had 88 countries. They have 64 countries represented in their records. They also have the auto-generated hints to kind of help you along and different levels of subscriptions. They have more of an international focus, so they aren't going to throttle you with just records specific to your country. It's going to be international records. They have additional French records from acquiring the French site filet.com. Just like with Ancestry, it's an individual tree. Nobody can change your tree unless you've given them access. It is compatible with Family Tree Builder if you want to have additional software on your desktop computer instead. And they do have cross-language support, which is another very helpful thing if you are trying to find relatives that live in like Latvia or Lithuania. They're going to be on this platform because they can get support in their language and they can use the website in their language. Just like with Ancestry, it's good for beginners because it's going to give you some of that help to get started with hints. And if you are not just focused on US research, this will also be helpful. They'll have a free trial as well. Just like with Ancestry, they're always adding new records and continuing to evolve their platform as well. Your tree will remain there indefinitely, even if you cancel your subscription for a while. They have set themselves apart with more photo features than you can find on other websites like Ancestry or FamilySearch, and I'll show you some of those in a minute. And like I mentioned with their cross-language support, their website does work in 42 different languages. So again, you're going to find a lot more connections to people where maybe this works in their language and Ancestry does not. It is expensive, but not as expensive as Ancestry. And they do have fewer records than Ancestry. But again, if they have the right records, it doesn't matter. Their search function is not great. I look for that to improve here soon. But you are better off on MyHeritage drilling into the collection you're looking for first and then searching within that. Whereas on Ancestry, it's pretty easy to just search wide open and then narrow it down from there. They do have a better search function. You can go into the Research tab on their website and then click on Collection Catalog to see if they have the records that are right for your research. They are headquartered in Israel, so they do have a lot of Jewish records, global Jewish records. And then these are some of their other areas of strength geographically. They do have more frequent sales than Ancestry for the most part. A lot of times you will find that Ancestry and MyHeritage kind of have sales at the same time competing with each other. I would not use the lower packages here because they mostly just let you copy other trees, which is always a mistake. If you're going to do one of their packages, either do the complete package that gives you access to all historical records and the family tree, or do the Omni package that adds in Genie.com, photo scanning, and also adds in historical newspapers on oldnews.com. My honest opinion would be to do the complete package and that you probably won't get enough value out of the Omni package, but that's just my opinion. They are the industry leader in photo tools, and you can use their photo tools for free with just a username and a login. It will probably limit your usage per day or per month. So here's an example of using their Colorize Photos tool. And here is their Enhance Photos tool. It removed some of the scratches and some of the blurriness from this tintype that I have. And here is one of their more recent endeavors, and that's photo animation. So you can upload a high quality photo here, a portrait preferably, and it will animate it. They also have something called Deep Story, where it will lip sync the photo with the facts about a person and read them aloud. They released an AI time machine where you can upload different photos of yourself and then put them into different themes. Their most useful photo tool is the Photo Dater tool. You don't have to individually apply that. Just any photo that you upload will automatically give an estimated date. And here is why that's helpful. If you have some photo that's unlabeled and you upload it here, it's going to give you an idea of when the photo was taken. You can then guess the age of the person in the photo and start to narrow down who it could be. They also released Live Memory, which is using AI to animate different photos. Then they expanded upon it and let you direct the AI how you wanted a photo to animate. Some of them are more successful than others. This one's a little bit odd. And sometimes they end up quite humorous, with Vern Oxley here just making hay disappear. And here my grandma magically makes a second pair of glasses appear. So this is kind of the way MyHeritage is going. They're trying to be more innovative on the tech side and kind of set themselves apart from Ancestry in this way. Findmypast is something that most people probably don't know about unless they've already done a lot of research in the UK. So it is the top site for a lot of England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and other places settled by UK immigrant research. They do have some unexpected things, like they have an amazing set of Irish Catholic parish records in the US. It's the only site where I've found a lot of Philadelphia church member lists, and I've been able to trace like Irish Catholic immigrants around the city just based on that. I would recommend just doing 1 month at a time on this, unless you're entirely researching these areas. It's probably not a great value for you. So I would just save up, 1 month of time and research that way. I wouldn't really put my family tree on here because, again, unless you're entirely UK focused, you will probably want to use other websites too. Now we're going to talk about FamilySearch.org. It is entirely free. It is run by the LDS Church out of Salt Lake City. And even though it's mostly, created for LDS church members, they have it free and open for everyone to use. And it's an amazing resource. I typically recommend, if you have it in your budget, start with Ancestry. Learn to research there, build your family tree there, and as you get better at researching and need to expand and find more records, then learn to use FamilySearch because it's not very user-friendly. They do have 66.24 billion searchable names that are indexed, 1.66 billion searchable names in trees. They have 5 billion unindexed digital images that you can access, meaning that you might have to page through it like you're reading a book, even though it's an image. Ancestry will make sure something is indexed and then release it. FamilySearch basically instantly releases things to you. They would rather have it be immediately available than have it be perfectly released and cataloged. They have 540,000 digitized books that are in the public domain that you can access. And they have records from 200 countries, so that's more than double what Ancestry had. They have a collaborative family tree, meaning that everybody works on the same family tree. Nobody has their own tree. So that can be great and terrible. So if your family is out there researching, and let's say somebody is arguing with you that your grandma Dorothy's middle name was Bernadette and you know it was Bliss, they might just start changing things, and there's nothing you can really do about it. But on the other hand, if you are researching German ancestors and you don't speak German, perhaps some distant cousin in Germany has already found everything, made sense of it, transcribed it, translated it, and uploaded it to that tree. So if you like the collaborative aspect, then it is a good place to build your tree. They do have optical character recognition software that they have applied to a lot of their unindexed digital images, and they will continue to add to that full text search. If you're not familiar with full text search, I wrote a research guide about that on my website as well. It is compatible with Family Tree Maker and Roots Magic software if you would prefer to go the software route. It is 100% free and the largest collection in the world, so you really can't beat that. They have those amazing unindexed records that you can't find a lot of other places. And since their website is not particularly easy to use, they do have a lot of tutorials to help you with it. I implore you to read those tutorials, watch their tutorial videos, because it'll save a lot of frustration. The main con being that it's not very user-friendly and it's not so easy to search. The con for me personally is that world tree. I am not a fan of collaborative family trees. I like to be able to control the formatting and the data in my tree. FamilySearch did start filming things and digitizing things in 1938, which is amazing. They have 300 film crews around the world scanning records at all times. So they focus on endangered and underrepresented records, and that's what they prioritize. But these are some of their geographic strengths. A lot of times I recommend searching by place for FamilySearch instead of just searching wide open on their regular search function. It'll help you to narrow down place first. And then here's an example of that, tips for effective searches, one of their little tutorials that pops up, and you should always start with that. So fold3.com has the largest collection of military records, and it is owned by Ancestry.com. So therefore, anything you find there, you can save to your Ancestry tree. And sometimes Fold3 hints will show up on your Ancestry tree as well. They have a lot of free records, especially the War of 1812 pension records that they are currently scanning and making available. A lot of military records for the US can only be found at the National Archives, but they do have a lot out here as well. It's worth noting that they have military yearbooks that are fairly recent, genealogically speaking, like from the Vietnam War era and the Korean War era. So I recommend you look into those if you have military ancestors. They have a lot of records that are always free, and they have a lot of free access days. Typically, I'm not thinking this is going to be a good value for you to have an annual subscription. Perhaps just sign up for a month or fold it into your regular Ancestry All Access subscription. I think newspapers.com is an excellent value, and I think it is the best newspaper site if they have the newspapers you need for your family history research. So again, you can go look and see what their holdings are first for free before you would subscribe. You could also, pair this with your Ancestry subscription with the all access one, and you can also save these things to your Ancestry tree. But keep in mind that if you have a subscription to newspapers.com, save things to your Ancestry tree, and then later cancel the newspapers.com subscription, you will not be able to view those linked records. They will still link, but you won't be able to see the actual newspaper articles. So they are adding loads of newspapers every day, and there are two different levels of subscription if you were to do a standalone subscription here. The basic one is just for records that are no longer under copyright. And Publisher Extra is going to give you some papers that are still under copyright, meaning anything 1930 and newer. So an advantage with that is that it loads newspapers from about like 1 month ago. So if you want to look at some newspaper from a big city and it's behind a paywall, if you have a newspapers.com Publisher Extra subscription, you'd be able to view copies from 1 month ago without having to use that paywall. I'm not a big fan of Newspaper Archive, but again, if you go out there and search and they have exactly what you need, then by all means do it. But I've not found it to be a good value. If you are a member of the National Genealogical Society, you're supposed to be able to get free access to Newspaper Archive. Mine's not been working, but it's supposed to work. They have things very poorly indexed, and they've not been upfront about price increases that I have found. So search and see if they have anything for you first, and then maybe just do that 7-day free trial. Here's an example of that poor indexing that they have in their newspaper search. So it's hard to just pull a transcription from here when it doesn't really make any sense. And if some of this transcription error is in the name of the person you're searching for, then they may not show up in a search. Genealogy Bank is really good for small town newspapers in my experience. They have 95% unique content. I would say this is probably not going to be worthwhile for you for an annual subscription. I would recommend just doing 1 month or even just the 7-day free trial. And here's why. In like the 5 years or so that I have been talking about this, that over 15,000 newspaper count has never gone up. So they are not actively adding to their collections like newspapers.com is. So if what you need is out here, then great, you'll be able to find it, but you may not need to continue to have a subscription to it for a long time. Chronicling America is a free newspaper site from the Library of Congress. It is really good as a finding aid. They aren't going to have as many newspapers available as the for-profit companies due to funding. Now, the search function isn't amazing, but what is really valuable here is that U.S. Newspaper Directory 1690 to the present. That is going to be a listing by location and by year of every newspaper known to have existed by the Library of Congress within the U.S. So here's how that would be helpful in your research. Let's say I'm looking for an 1870 newspaper for Northfield, Minnesota. I can go out here and look at Northfield, Minnesota, and I can see which newspapers existed at which time. And even if it's not digitized, it will show me where I can find it. Oldnews.com came out recently from MyHeritage, and it's part of the Omni subscription through MyHeritage, unless you want to do a standalone oldnews.com subscription. It has an international focus, so you might be able to find Norwegian newspapers or Danish newspapers or German ones. It has over 360 million pages so far, and they do have a collection catalog that you can view for free to see if it will help your research to subscribe. If you have a lot of UK research, you might be interested in the British Newspaper Archive. I have not really found anything I've been looking for yet, but it just might be the perfect thing for you. There are some other newspaper websites out there too. A lot of people find things on Google News. Some people say that they also find things that exist on oldnews.com for subscription for free on Google News. So you might want to look into that too. But this is an awesome one right here. Community History Archive. I think it's called Advantage Preservation. They have a lot of small newspapers. They're based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, so that's why it's very heavy on, the central part of the U.S. But they have loads of free newspapers, especially for small towns. These are the top 2 cemetery websites. So findagrave.com, free to use, but it was acquired by Ancestry. So it will tie in to your Ancestry tree and will show up as hints on Ancestry. Billion Graves is a little bit less robust. I have not yet found anything on Billion Graves that I couldn't find on Find a Grave. So my pick for that would be using Find a Grave. Now, remember that this stuff is crowdsourced. It is user submitted, user created, nobody double checking anything. The cemetery offices are not going in and meticulously adding all of these memorials based on their true records. This is just something people add and people make mistakes. So be very aware of the relationships that you find on here, needing more documentation to prove, and exact dates and middle names and locations and even burial locations. Make sure with other bits of information that it truly is correct. Don't just assume it's right. Same with photos on there. You'll find a lot of photos on like somebody that died in 1820 and it's got this picture of somebody that was clearly born about 1890 or 1900. So don't take everything at that is proven. Don't assume things are correct on there. People can submit edits as well. And if you submit an edit, it goes to the person that manages that memorial or sometimes the person that created it. It depends because you can transfer memorials. And they can go in and approve it or they can decline it. If they do nothing, it will be automatically applied within 3 weeks. So if I go in and say that George Washington is Elvis Presley's father, and I submit that edit and nobody declines it, it will be auto-applied in 3 weeks. So always keep that in mind. You need to prove the information you find on there. Treat it as a clue. Here are some other family tree making possibilities for you if you aren't wanting to do Ancestry, FamilySearch, or MyHeritage. Now, Legacy, Family Tree Maker, Roots Magic, and Roots Finder are all going to be software that you can have on your computer. But again, you might need to upgrade it later, or you might need to upgrade your computer and then it will no longer work. So if you want to do a collaborative family tree and you're not really digging the whole FamilySearch world tree where anybody can change anything, WikiTree could be a good collaborative tree for you. They actually require sources when you make a change. So that can help deter some of the people that are making willy-nilly changes, and it can help for a more accurate tree. Your local library will likely have free library edition access to these paid subscription sites. Some of them will even allow for free remote access. So that can be a good budget way to use these sites without paying for expensive subscriptions. However, you cannot build your tree in their free version. You will need to build it separately and just research in these paid free versions at the library. Wanted to mention this site, artifacts.com, is a way for you to record family stories that are attached to items to explain the background behind things. I know both of the ladies that started this company, and I wanted to mention this because I have so many different heirlooms that I'm the only one that knows the history of them. I've tried to like record them somewhere, but this is a good way to have the story of something attached to the individual item because you can record it either verbally or typing it and then put a QR code on it. And then you can just attach that directly to the bottom of the vase or the butter churn. And then people in future generations will be able to figure out what is meaningful about that item. Now we're going to talk about the where and when of records because you're unlikely to find a 1740 Virginia birth record. That just isn't really going to be something that was prioritized and recorded. So I want to set you up with realistic expectations for your research. For US research, you're probably going to start with census records. Now, here are the different census dates. We started in 1790. 1850 is the first one in the US to list all members of a household and not just the head of household. 1890 was destroyed in a fire and then the subsequent water damage from putting out that fire in 1921. And then 1950 census was released in 2022. 1960 will not be released until 2032. All of the big genealogy websites will have these records, most of them for free. The National Archives site has a lot of additional information on census records and where to find all of them. Here's an example of the 1840 census versus the 1850. Here in 1840, you can see it's just different columns and just tick marks for number of people in the household for that age bracket and gender. Whereas 1850, you've got every member of the household listed along with where they were born. So you can trace this family's migration westward just based on the birthplaces. 1880 census was the first one to introduce listing the birthplace of each individual's parents. So that can be extremely helpful. And also the relationship to head of household. 1870 census only listed household members, not how they were related. And then in 1900, it's a whole new ballgame because you have birth month, year, how long you're married. For women, you're asked the number of children you've had, the number that are living. Immigrants are asked if they're naturalized and when, and how many years in a country. Just remember that the information is only as accurate as the person giving it, so there will be mistakes. There are a number of state censuses as well, and they're going to vary by states. You'll just need to look into it. Iowa's a big favorite of mine. The 1925 Iowa State Census has a second page where each individual was asked the name of their parents, including their mother's maiden name, where their parents were born, if their parents were still living, how old they were, and then where their parents were married. Vital records will vary a lot. Those are birth, marriage, and death records by time and place. So you might find birth records very early on in New England at the town clerk office, whereas in Minnesota, you may not find a birth record at the state level until like 1912. They're often recorded earlier at the county level in the US, so that's something you would look for on FamilySearch. Marriage is most common to find because that involves money, property, inheritance. Always follow money. Now, you're going to find very different information until things are standardized at the state level, but be sure to check at county level or even town clerk level much earlier than the state requirements. Pay a lot of attention to World War I and World War II draft cards for men because they contain a lot of information like next of kin, exact birth date, and birthplace. For a lot of these people, that will be the earliest record you can find for their birth information because predates any birth record requirements. This can also be very helpful for tracing people that change their name because you can look at the signature. And it will also be helpful for figuring out movement in a time where people became more mobile. And all men of the serving age should have one of these, whether they served or not. There are a lot of military records that can be harder to find. A lot of them are only at the National Archives. Like if you find a pension application index card, like the one on the upper right here, that is only available through the National Archives for Union soldiers, and I have a link in your handout for somebody that can go retrieve those for you for a good cost. You might find burial records for Grand Army of the Republic, which would be Union Civil War soldiers. That'll have a lot more information, especially like the regiment that they served in. You can use that to spend more time researching exactly what they experienced in the Civil War. Ancestry has a lot of Revolutionary War records, as does Fold 3. And then the top left one is a War of 1812 pension. Those are on fold3.com for free. And they have so much information that predates record requirements. Like it would list a lot of information about a marriage in a time when there's probably not any type of marriage recorded. Probate and land records will help you a lot, especially pre-1850, where it's harder to determine members of a household and family relationships. So always watch to see who inherits money, who inherits land, when land is divided for resale, different probate documents, different land deeds. So pay a lot of attention to all of the details in here, and AI can often help you summarize them too and extract the actual meaning out of the records. Immigration documents will vary a lot based on time as well. From about 1860 forward, you can expect to find a declaration of intention to become a citizen prior to the actual naturalization petition or certificate. So look for both components, and prior to 1908, this was handled at the county level. So it's not a federal form and it's not standardized. So some will have loads of information and some will have very scant information. Passenger lists will also vary a lot. The more recent ones will have destination and the address and name of the person they're going to, along with the relationship, and then a lot of times even a contact in the old country. So that can be extremely helpful. If you're looking back like around 1850 or so, it's probably just going to have a name and age and country of origin. If you're really lucky, it might have an occupation that you can trace as well. But don't expect that you can find passenger lists back into like the 1700s. It's very unlikely to find anything like that. In fact, it wasn't until the Steerage Act of 1820 that ships even needed to record their comings and goings from different ports. So definitely not immigration paperwork at that point. You'll learn to use miscellaneous documents too, like county histories, city directories, newspapers, and also even yearbooks. Ancestry has a lot of yearbooks that they keep adding to on their site too. Now we'll talk a little bit about how DNA can really contribute to your research and help you break down different things where the paper trail maybe goes cold. There are three main types of consumer DNA tests. The most common one would be autosomal DNA, and that's going to be what people talk about when they say they've had a DNA test. It's going to be the one that gives you your ethnicity percentage results and shows you your matches to like third, fourth cousins, etc. Widely available, and it is the lowest price of the DNA tests out there. It's typically going to be the most useful, but it is limited in that it can only go back about 200 years. So it's not going to show you that you are related to Charlemagne. It just does not have that reach. Y-DNA, only males can test, and it's only going to trace their direct paternal line. And it can go way, way back to the advent of surnames because the Y chromosome is passed down virtually unchanged from generation to generation. It's difficult to work with, and it can only be taken through family tree DNA. The most useful thing with that would be to join a surname study. Like I had my mom's first cousin, Ray, take it, and then I added him to the McFarlane surname study group. And there's a very competent admin that takes everybody's results, puts them into a spreadsheet, and then groups people by how closely they're related. And then you can work together to figure out your most recent common ancestor and also places where the paper trail maybe leaves off, and you can figure out how you might be related to people way far back in time. So it's kind of going to your dead end in your family tree research and then skipping over a bunch of generations and finding where you join again. And then you can try to fill in those pieces. Now, if you don't have a male to test, this is only going to test somebody who shares the surname of the line that you're researching, somebody that currently has that surname. you can go up some generations. So let's say I wanted to test somebody on one line and I'm female. So I go up a bunch of different lines and find like my second great grandfather and find his brother. And then I can search down to a living male descendant that carries that surname. I could have them test and it would be the same as if I had tested because there's such little variation between generations. mtDNA is also only available at family tree DNA, and that's mitochondrial DNA. Anyone can test, but it will only be your direct maternal line. I have not found it to be as useful in research, but a lot of people have been glad that they have tested. DNA results can help you figure out different ethnicities in your family line. It's going to automatically split you out with paternal versus maternal, or if your parents have not tested, it'll be parent 1 and parent 2 on Ancestry, and then you can delegate whichever one to the correct side based on surnames and ethnicity. So they can even zoom in and give you specific locations, but this is telling me that my Norwegian side, my DNA most closely matches people that currently live in Toten in Norway and have lived there for multiple generations, because that is their reference population for where they're getting these ethnicity results. So if I didn't know where in Norway my family was from, this would give me a lead on places to start searching. But don't get too attached to your ethnicity results because they will fluctuate every probably 6 months or so as they continue to update their reference populations. So that's a good thing about testing at these sites. It will continue to update as they get more precise. You would not need to ever retest your DNA. And remember that ethnicity and citizenship are not the same thing. So if your family's from Croatia, but you have loads of Italian DNA, same difference. Geographically speaking, they're very nearby. So that does not mean that your family actually came from Italy and not Croatia. If you're at a dead end on your paper record research, DNA can help you fill in the blanks. Like on Ancestry, they have through lines, and that's going to show me possible ancestors and possible other people to add to my tree based on similar user trees and confirmed DNA matches. Now, it doesn't automatically know that that's how you're related to somebody. It's just saying you are definitely a DNA match to this individual, and here's their tree. So nobody is confirming that's the line that you're related through, but it can lead to breakthroughs if you treat it as a clue and not as fact. These are the current testing companies. So I think Ancestry is the best one, and it's frequently 50% off. Sometimes you can get it down to 39, so watch for those sales. I wouldn't ever buy it at full price, honestly, because they have so many sales. Family Tree DNA, you don't need to take their autosomal test, like Ancestry's type of test, because you can just take your raw DNA results from Ancestry, download them, and upload them for free into Family Tree DNA. They have a smaller testing database, so they will welcome your results to increase their database. Same with Living DNA. They are another smaller company, and you can just upload into their database. MyHeritage used to allow uploads, but they no longer do. If you want to be in their database, you will need to take their test as well. And 23andMe, they've now come out on the other side of their bankruptcy, and they seem to be going strong again. So if you want to test, you can there. You can't upload into their database. You have to take their test. Now, here's the thing. Somebody told me that they were looking for their biological father, and they tested at Family Tree DNA, and they didn't have any leads there. So they've just given up on finding their biological father. Well, you don't know where your best matches have tested. Maybe your best matches are on MyHeritage. Maybe they're on Ancestry. You don't know. So if you're trying to solve something like that, I recommend you get into every database because you don't know where that magical match will be. And if you are just trying to use DNA to complement your family history research, then I recommend you test at Ancestry and tie it into your tree. That will be the most useful. Since there isn't a way for all of the different testing companies to communicate across databases, because that would not be a good business model, so they will never do that, you can use GEDmatch. It's a free service, and you can download your free results and you can upload them into this database. And that would be a way that maybe you, who has tested at 23andMe, might match somebody else who has uploaded their results here but had tested on MyHeritage. In 2024, Ancestry also released this Know Your Pet DNA option for dogs as well. This is my rescue dog, Jingles, and I tested him right away. And so it has him as Border Collie, Lab, Coonhound, and Chow Chow. And it also has genetic matches too. In fact, I think I actually found his dad in here. His dad is named Tito. People often ask me about artifact testing. If they have, hair from the 1800s or a stamp that was licked back, in 1820 or something. So you can possibly do that, but it's very cost prohibitive. This was one of the big companies to the letter DNA, but they have stopped taking any orders as of July 2025. This one was previously called Keepsake DNA, but is now Genetic Legacies, and they do still do artifact testing. But notice the cost here. You have to do 2 different phases, and you may not end up with a viable sample anyway. Now we're going to talk a little bit about myths and limitations in your research. One of the most prevalent myths across genealogy is that names were forcibly changed at Ellis Island, and that's just impossible. It's not true. And it keeps getting repeated in movies and all over the internet all the time, and I personally have waged war against it. It's misinformation. So the passenger lists were created in the port of departure, not at arrival. So nobody was asking your ancestor who didn't speak English how to spell or write their name. That did not happen. There were interpreters across Ellis Island, and so people were able to speak in their native tongue, and it was just comparing the lists. It was not making a brand new list. So let's say that for some reason your ancestor, Jan Stepankowski, comes through. He only speaks Polish, and he couldn't find anybody Polish. And his name was recorded incorrectly as John Simpson. Your ancestor could have immediately left Ellis Island and started using Jan Stepankowski again. There was no reason that you had to stick to that name spelling or anything on any paperwork, and he would have known that, because there was no such thing as a legal name at that point. You were not required to go to a court to change your name. You didn't have to have consistent spelling. That's a pretty recent thing. So that is definitely a myth if it exists in your family. And it's more likely that somebody changed their name to fit in with their new culture. So that's how you end up getting Jan Stepankowski into being John Simpson. He just changed it. Family crests and coat of arms. Those are also another big myth. People believe that they have this specific family crest tied to their name, but that's typically just a marketing ploy that you find at fairs or online or in, Dublin when you go to visit. Surnames did not have these family crests or coats of arms. It was tied to an individual. They owned that, and it was passed down to a male, typically a male descendant. So don't spend a lot of time trying to find your surname family crest, because it's not a thing. It's a very common myth that you have Native American ancestry in your family tree. I have had, I don't know, probably 40 cases where people have hired me to find the Native American line, and I have only found it in about 2 of them. The other ones, it's shown either inconclusive or false. If you see something in print, don't assume it to be correct. People had embellishments. They made themselves sound better than they actually were, and, more accomplished. There will be limitations in your research as well. There are a lot of fires. There are a lot of other, like, courthouses being destroyed. There are a lot of things that will keep you from being able to find the records you're looking for. Perhaps privacy laws will hinder record access. There are a lot of records that aren't released for over 100 years after somebody was born. Sometimes you will reach periods of immigration when there's so many people coming over, like from Ireland during the Great Famine, that there just simply are not the immigration records available that you are looking for. They don't survive. Maybe something wasn't recorded. Historical distance will play a factor as well. The farther back you go in time, the fewer records will exist for just general people. Pre-Civil War, obviously very tough for African American families, but there are a lot of organizations that are prioritizing getting any available records online for people, like the 10 Million Names Project through American Ancestors, just to name one. There's a lot of destruction. So the Dublin fire at the Public Records Office in 1922 destroyed so many records, and that's why Irish research is so incredibly difficult. Throughout the Civil War in the South, many courthouses were burned, so you'll find that a lot of records don't exist prior to 1865. World War II, also a lot of record damage, so you'll want to check the area you're researching for any record loss. It can be very challenging to get your ancestor back into the old country, wherever it may be, but the main takeaway is you need to know the place first. It's harder to just search across a whole country when you're dealing with digital archives in other countries, because a lot of times they will just only be record images, and you need to know where to look first. Here are just a couple examples of digital archives in other countries. They will typically be free to access. Archeon is a pay site in Germany. It does have a subscription, but it'll be the best way to find Lutheran German records. And again, you'll have to know the place first. Here's an example from Kristdala in Kalmar, Sweden. Through immigration records, I'd already determined that these people lived in Kalmar, and then I was able to find an emigration document from leaving Stockholm that listed Kristdala as a hometown. I was then able to go into the Swedish archive site, Riksarkivet, and find the church records for Kristdala, and then I can dig right into the family. So you have to figure out that location before you can find the record. So some final thoughts on research skills that you will need to develop. Remember that it takes time to learn to do this well. It's not going to be instant success. You will stumble a little bit. You will trust some things that aren't actually facts, and you'll have to backtrack. That's just how it works. Records are AI indexed, so it won't always be a perfect spelling. You might need to do some creative searching. Like if George Weaver is not showing up when you search, you might need to just search on all 1860 census records for that county for anyone named George, and then weed them out from there. Spelling does not matter. Your ancestor was not asked to spell their name on a census record. People just wrote down what they heard. So be very aware of many ways that you can spell something. I used to think that if I found McFarlane with a D at the end, then it couldn't be my family because they used an E instead. But spelling did not matter to your ancestor until about 100 years ago, or mostly until like the advent of Social Security around 1936. When you are trying to evaluate which record is more likely to be accurate, choose the one closest to the event when it occurred. That's typically more accurate. And don't give too much confidence to some answer that is given by an informant. Maybe the informant was a son-in-law who had just married the daughter and didn't really know where his in-laws' parents were from and just put down a guess. Or maybe it's the daughter who is 75 and has lived with her 95-year-old parents her whole life and gives extremely accurate answers as the death certificate informant. You just need to pay attention. Always pursue the original record, not the indexed information, because you can't verify that that information on the index is correct. You need to see the original. You need to make sure that it is accurate. If there's an area you're researching, like Ohio, join a Facebook group for Ohio genealogy, because that's where you're going to find the true genealogy gold. You'll find some hand transcribed cemetery inventory that somebody else has uploaded. You'll find local photos. You'll find somebody that's willing to go to a courthouse for you. So it helps to be specific and join those groups. Learn to research the fan club, which stands for friends, associates, and neighbors. Your ancestor was not just on an island by themselves. They had people in their orbit, and you need to research those people as well to add more context to your ancestor's life and to find more information about them. If your ancestor was giving an affidavit for his friend's Civil War service, you might find your ancestor listed on that person's Civil War pension application. So look for your ancestor in more places than just their own records. Avoid confirmation bias, follow details, and avoid assumptions. Don't assume that Grandma was not married before she met Grandpa. Be open-minded, or you might be missing a lot of important information. Create a research plan. Start with what you know and work back from that, even if it's just on a piece of paper. Use the FamilySearch wiki all the time to figure out which records exist. Then you won't be wasting your time trying to find something that does not exist for that time and place. FamilySearch wiki is always free to use, and it's going to contain links to records on pay subscription sites and on free sites. Try to stick to a research goal if you can. It won't be so overwhelming if you're just focused on one thing. Talk to other family members. Try to find distant cousins, because a lot of times it's like a game of telephone where different bits have been passed down different lines. Create timelines to figure out where your research might be lacking. Maybe there's some information that is completely apparent that you are missing if you write down a timeline and figure out where there are gaps. Record your research. If you contact a genealogical society, write down the date you contacted them, because otherwise you might find that you just do the same thing a year later. I also recommend that you sign up for Genealogy Bargains, which is a blog and a Facebook page, and Thomas McKenty will spend lots of time explaining to you all of the different genealogy sales that come up and how to fully utilize them. Here are the different places where you can find my daily genealogy tips. I post the most on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You'll see the same videos on those places. You'll see a little bit less on YouTube and Blue Sky. If you did not already email me your receipt for this webinar, do so that I can send you the handout for it with all of the clickable links, because there isn't a way for me to automate it. So be sure to send that to me and I can forward that right over, and then I'll see you in my other classes.